Joseph Stiglitz's The Price of Inequality, 2012, explores the profound consequences of economic disparity in the United States and its implications for society, politics, and democracy. The book argues that inequality is not an inevitable outcome of globalization or technological progress, but rather a result of deliberate policy choices and systemic flaws. Stiglitz, a Nobel laureate in economics, critiques the mechanisms by which wealth and power become concentrated in the hands of a few, ultimately threatening the very fabric of democracy. Overview of inequality in the U.S. Stiglitz opens by examining the scale of inequality in the U.S., highlighting that the richest 1% control a disproportionate share of wealth. He underscores that this concentration of wealth isn't just a matter of income disparity, but also extends to power and influence. This elite group can shape policies and regulations to perpetuate their dominance, often at the expense of the broader population. Stiglitz contends that such inequality undermines social mobility, creating a system where the circumstances of one's birth increasingly determine their life outcomes. The myth of meritocracy. One of the central themes of the book is the critique of the American dream and the myth of meritocracy. Stiglitz argues that the narrative of hard work leading to success is increasingly detached from reality. Instead, access to quality education, healthcare, and opportunities is largely influenced by socioeconomic status. This system perpetuates inequality, as those born into wealth have greater resources and networks to maintain their privileged status, while those in lower income brackets face significant barriers to upward mobility. Causes of inequality. Stiglitz identifies several key drivers of inequality, many of which are rooted in policy decisions and institutional frameworks. 1. Tax policy. Tax reforms in recent decades have disproportionately benefited the wealthy. Lowering tax rates on capital gains, dividends, and high incomes has exacerbated wealth concentration. 2. Deregulation. The deregulation of financial markets has allowed corporations and financial institutions to pursue profits without adequate oversight, leading to crises like the 2008 financial meltdown. The costs of these crises, Stiglitz notes, are borne disproportionately by ordinary citizens. 3. Labor market dynamics. The decline of unions and the weakening of labor protections have eroded workers' bargaining power, resulting in stagnant wages for many while corporate profits soar. 4. Education system. Inequalities in access to quality education reinforce economic disparities. Public schools in low-income areas are underfunded, limiting opportunities for students to break the cycle of poverty. 5. Corporate influence. The intertwining of politics and corporate interests enables the wealthy to shape legislation in their favor. Campaign financing and lobbying ensure that policies often prioritize corporate profits over public welfare. Social and political implications. Stiglitz explores how economic inequality translates into political inequality. The wealthy wield significant influence over political processes, from funding campaigns to lobbying for favorable legislation. This dynamic undermines democratic principles as policies increasingly reflect the interests of the elite rather than the needs of the majority. The book highlights how inequality erodes trust in institutions. When people perceive the system as rigged, they lose faith in government, leading to political polarization and social unrest. This disillusionment can give rise to populist movements as individuals seek alternatives to a system they view as unresponsive to their needs. Economic costs of inequality. Stiglitz challenges the notion that inequality is a necessary trade-off for economic growth. He argues that extreme inequality is not only morally indefensible, but also economically inefficient. Concentrating wealth in the hands of a few reduces overall consumption, as the wealthy tend to save more than they spend. This diminishes demand, which is a key driver of economic growth. Moreover, inequality stifles innovation and productivity. When opportunities are unequally distributed, talented individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds may never reach their potential, depriving the economy of their contributions. Stiglitz also points out that high levels of inequality can lead to financial instability, as seen in the 2008 crisis, where risky financial practices disproportionately harmed lower-income households. The role of government. Stiglitz emphasizes that government policy plays a crucial role in either exacerbating or mitigating inequality. He critiques the neoliberal agenda that prioritizes market efficiency over equity, arguing that markets alone cannot address structural inequalities. Instead, active government intervention is necessary to ensure fairer outcomes. Key policy recommendations include progressive taxation, implementing higher taxes on the wealthy and closing loopholes to ensure they pay their fair share. Social investments, increasing funding for education, healthcare, and social safety nets to provide a level playing field for all citizens. Regulation, strengthening regulations in the financial sector to prevent excessive risk-taking and ensure greater accountability. Labor protections, supporting unionization and implementing policies that boost wages and improve working conditions. Campaign finance reform, reducing the influence of money in politics to ensure that policy decisions reflect the public interest rather than corporate interests. While The Price of Inequality focuses primarily on the US, Stiglitz also discusses the global implications of inequality. He highlights how international economic policies, such as trade agreements and austerity measures, often exacerbate disparities between countries. Developing nations, in particular, face significant challenges in achieving equitable growth due to the dominance of wealthier nations in setting global economic rules. Stiglitz warns that global inequality can lead to instability as economic discontent fuels political unrest and migration pressures. He calls for a more equitable global economic system that prioritizes sustainable development and reduces disparities between nations. Moral and ethical considerations. Beyond economic and political arguments, Stiglitz frames inequality as a moral issue. He asserts that societies have a responsibility to ensure that all individuals have the opportunity to lead dignified lives. Extreme inequality undermines social cohesion and the sense of shared purpose that binds communities together. Stiglitz also critiques the ideology that equates wealth with merit. He argues that many of the wealthy have benefited from systemic advantages, including inherited wealth, market failures, and preferential policies. Therefore, addressing inequality is not about punishing success, but about creating a fairer and more just society. In The Price of Inequality, Stiglitz offers a compelling critique of the current economic system and its impact on society. He challenges the idea that inequality is an unavoidable consequence of progress, instead attributing it to policy choices that prioritize the interests of the few over the many. The book concludes with a call to action, urging policymakers, citizens, and global institutions to address inequality through comprehensive reforms. Stiglitz argues that a more equitable society is not only morally right, but also essential for sustainable economic growth and the health of democracy. By presenting a detailed analysis of the causes and consequences of inequality, The Price of Inequality serves as both a critique of the status quo and a roadmap for building a fairer, more inclusive society.